My name is Jim Ryan, and I'm the new instructional designer here at EWU. My job here is to take a look at the programs, courses, and people from a different point of view, to see how all these Lego pieces fit, and to imagine how I can help put them together differently to make something new and amazing. Welcome to the Play to Learn podcast. Today, I'm meeting with Romeal Watson, a longtime friend and a passionate advocate for creating pathways to student employment after graduation in his role as the Associate Director for Employer Relations in the EWU Career Center. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello, this is Jim Ryan, and I'm sitting here with a longtime friend and new colleague, Romeal.
That's right. That's right.
Now, we go way back.
You said long time, but I think it's a long time.
It could be with an extra few O's in there. I think, when were we in Eastern together? Was that 09?
It had to been.
Or 08, 09, something like that?
Somewhere in that area, yeah.
Yeah, so you and Clean were there for my wife's and I's wedding.
Yeah.
And that was a special treat, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
And now we've come full circle to me coming back and getting a chance to work with you and your colleagues.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I've been here quite a spell, and it's been fun, man. Ups and downs and lots of rewards and having fun. Yeah.
So if you could just give a breakdown, what do you do here at Eastern Washington?
So my official title at this point, I am the Associate Director for Employer Relations. And so if you can think about the Career Center, you can cut it in half. On one half, you have the advising team. So they do all the career development for the students. They come in, get the resume interviews, all that stuff developed. And then you have the other side, which is does most of the external work, where we go out and we meet with employers, and whatever kinds of partnerships or opportunities they want to provide, we help to cultivate that and bring it on campus. Yeah. And then that also includes like career fairs and info sessions, you name it. We just try to bridge that gap.
So this is a pretty big bridge, though, the service you guys are providing, because students go to school to get jobs.
Yeah.
That is the whole point of going to a higher level education like Eastern, is to get that job. And you are that on-ramp between them and their future employees.
Certainly, whatever spiritual uplift they have in between, that's great. But at the end of the day, they want to increase their market value and make a nice transition out to their careers, whatever that may be. So, it's one of those things where it's not just Eastern, but across the country. Most career centers have been treated like a third wheel. They're just kind of off to the side, and students come to see them when it's time to get ready to graduate in their last week or two. They come see us. That's been the unfortunate thorn in our side that we've had to endure. But the more work we're putting in, we're just trying to get an early start around myth busting and reshaping that perspective on when they should come see us and be a part of that process. So, yeah.
Well, from one stance, I understand that, because the students that are coming through here, they don't have a whole lot of life experience.
Right.
Like, they don't necessarily understand the process of, okay, I have this degree and I want to get a job. Now what?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think their instructors are just focused on giving them the content, and then they're supposed to figure it out after that. So maybe the disconnect isn't so much between the students and the Career Center. It would be more maybe the instructors and the Career Center.
It's multifaceted, to be honest with you. We have a high first-gen population, and so some of that onus might even be on the family structure from, what parents expected of the students. But again, if they've never been to college, how do they know what to encourage them on? Most of them, hey, you're in college, good, go shoot for the stars. There's nothing real tangible or detail oriented around how they can actually do that. So by the time the students come here, they almost have to create a secondary set of friends and family to help them navigate this place. And so we always say, come at the time they get to campus, to start seeking out those resources, because again, these are people that can help guide them along the way, give them advice. Academic advising is an easy one because there's already a natural pipeline on campus. Students kind of have to see an academic advisor their first year. And so naturally, they're going to have that involvement where they're like, okay, don't take this class. You want to have these done by the first year, yada, yada. But even in that particular sense, the student may not always know what that means career-wise. They may know that they may have an idea, I should say it that way, that they might want to go into marketing. Well, there's so many different industries, so many different ways that you apply that. And at the end of the day, they may not even want to go into marketing at all. That's just what they thought initially, right? And so who do they bounce those ideas off of at an earlier stage where they can make those necessary adjustments? Oftentimes we find students, they reach that point of no return where they have so many credits built up, they might as well just finish a degree. And then when you start talking about the industry and what that entails and how they need to prepare themselves, they realize, oh crap, maybe this wasn't the industry I thought maybe I had in mind. So how do we get them to unpack that sooner and then help them with the resources sort of leading into that? That's sort of the uphill battle that we've been fighting for quite some time. It's getting better with the more alliances we build on campus with faculty. There are champions here that understand that plight and they fight with us, and we just try our best to work.
Fight alongside you.
Yeah. Hey, that's it. That's it. And so we start small, we build it, and we just kind of replicate that message out as much as we can. Yeah.
So what kind of partnerships have you gone out and facilitated with the external world?
Well, so just something more tangible. Just yesterday, we went to do a pro visit with Spokane Police Department. If you haven't done one of those, it's pretty cool. They actually have a well thought out tour of the facility and what they actually do. And I learned a lot of things there in terms of I didn't know the difference between Superior Court and local court, city court, just what it entails, the different divisions and the kind of work they do. And it was pretty cool. We worked with them for quite a while. It's just, we've never, I don't believe, done a tour. And we finally got to that point where they come to our campus quite frequently. Now we go to their campus, their area, and then build it. But that's just one example. We work quite a bit off and on with Kaiser. I know Enterprise is one of our longtime partners. They've come to work with us. They donate money to our causes and whatnot. And so there's just a handful of companies spread out that either on or off work with us on different things. So, yeah.
So now, is that a case where you, as in the department, will go out and visit these places, or do students get to come along as well and see those things firsthand?
It depends on the projects. In most cases, they would rather come to campus and then promote. We would set them up with a table in the pub or something, and then they would promote that way. Some want info sessions where we might get them, we do some marketing around it. They'll be in XYZ room at this time and they'll talk about the company. Some of them find that appealing. And then some of them will just come to the fairs. They just wait and capitalize on those types of things. Class visits are pretty popular if we can manage it. So if they come to campus, they might do a combination of all three. They'll do class visits throughout a portion of the morning and afternoon. They'll do some tabling in those gaps where they've already had class. They don't interrupt anybody. And then they might do an info session later in the day, just kind of fill their entire schedule up. So those seem to be really popular because they don't have to wait for the big events. They can always come in and just capitalize on that. And they already have a captive audience by way of the classrooms. And so we just lean in on those champions that are pretty consistent with allowing us access to the classroom. And we just do it that way. And we do in hopes that it builds up enough popularity that other faculty will want to take advantage of it. And sometimes that works out, sometimes not. But, it's slow and steady. So, yeah.
Can you give me some examples of maybe not specific faculty, but some faculty in what department have been those champions, those partners that you've been able to work with?
Oh, gosh, there's a handful. So, Chris Vallejo is very helpful. She's in the literature area in English. She's free whenever we need something to get replicated out to students. She's pretty much on top of it. Last year, she was the faculty or president. So she helped us get through the faculty that way, which was helpful. Faculty, they meet several times a month, but the bigger meeting that they have is usually the first Tuesday of every month, something like that, 3:00. But Chris was really good with giving us an open entry into those meetings and giving us time to speak. But even then, over the years, since I've been here, she's always been that kind of person that understood that relationship that we're supposed to have. And so whenever we needed something, she always stepped in. Jessica Boyer over in communication, she's always pretty consistent about working with us. We're going to be going to iHeartMedia here coming up. That's going to be May 8th. And so, again, she's taking her entire class on that tour. And we're going to have a tour, eat pizza, have a good time. And that's just, again, she's just using her class time to make that available to her students. So let me think off the top of my head, what else do we have? We have, Jessica Boyer, we have Stu Steiner. That's an easy one, right? He's already doing his own thing anyway. And so most of the time we just tell him what we're doing and then he'll let us know. Esteban with electrical engineering, he's pretty supportive. But so, yeah, we got a nice core of folks that whenever we reach out, we do that. and they step up to the plate and let us know how it works. Yeah.
I had the good fortune last week of meeting with Massengale.
Travis Massengale. Yeah, that's another one, another champion. And Mindy Breen and them both over in the design world. Absolutely. Yeah, we were trying to put together a level up event this year. It didn't pan out, but I think we're just going to try to postpone it to a better time next year, maybe. But they came to us with this idea. Jasmine Jackson in our office, who's one of our career advisors, Casey, myself, and we all just kind of worked together to try to see how we can build this conference up. But it was a sort of an inverted way of getting outside of your typical symposium or even career fair method. It was really sort of designed to have, like, usually when it gets around this time, designers will have a symposium style. They'll have their posters, they'll have their designs, and then they'll showcase them out. They'll have their little folders and stuff, and that can get kind of expensive, with these big, massive folders with all their work, getting all these expensive prints done. And so instead, they were thinking about maybe just hosting a variety of tables here. So it's almost like a career fair, but the folks at the tables would be the students, and they'll be having their portfolios there. And then employers would come in and showcase it that way. So I think that's how it went. Either way, it was pretty genius. And it was just a way of lessening the cost of the student and then really gaining more support from the outside community to be a part of it. So hopefully we'll keep at it and it'll get better. We'll be able to launch it next year sometime.
So are there any student stories? You don't have to, if you want to mention names, that's fine, but if not, but are there any stories there that you were able to see that and help that student get through and have a really successful career?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I just had coffee with a student, what was it, Tuesday. And they were archaeology major or anthropology major. And her title is so sophisticated, I can't always remember it, but it's like cultural historical anthropologist, something of that nature, where if I'm butchering it, the folks in this world will know more about it. But essentially, she studies the past cultures, and she looks at bodies and bone structures and kind of figures out like what was going on during that time period. She might go to an excavation site, a burial site, and from there, based off what she's seeing, be able to look at the bodies and figure out what was going on during that time. It's very fascinating stuff. But that's sort of what her claim to fame was. And she did so well here. She went on to an accelerator school out in the UK. So she was out in Edinburgh, I believe. I'm getting my areas mixed up. But then she was out at the University of Edinburgh for a year under an accelerator program. And she just got back. And so we had coffee to kind of catch up. But that's just an example of a student in particular that was really impacted. There's a lot of stories over the course of 15 years. And so we got students at Nickelodeon that working there. There was one student, a film major, came in as a freshman, hadn't declared his major yet, but ended up getting an internship very early on at Jon Stewart's The Daily Show. He was working backstage in New York. So he did that for 3 months, stayed for another 3 months, went to TV Land, which New York also at that time. And then out of that 6 months, came back, finished up his degree. Now he's working at Nickelodeon. He's been there for several years now, at least 8 or 9 years now, apparently. So I'm kind of dating myself, but it's a good example of what you could do with the right type of guidance. So yeah, that's James. James doing pretty well.
Yeah, we talked a little while ago, and I can't remember exactly everything that we covered, but you had some, I think, really innovative ideas about where you'd like to see things moving towards, or see how the university views this department and how it can be utilized.
Oh, man. Yeah. I've been screaming from the rafters for quite some time. To be honest with you, the education side of the campus, they get a lot of love. Faculty, they have the unions, they have a lot of backing. When they want something, they can pretty much get it for the most part. And so there's a lot of support for that because, again, that's one of the reasons why people come to school. They work under a professor. They get a lot of their educational and research foundation from doing that portion. So that's a very important component. In the middle part of it, you have your student life. So basically, what kinds of activities and things that students can engage in while they're here to really give them a much more fulfilled experience. So we're talking about Greek life. They're part of a club or an organization. What other kind of resources are on campus, like Learning Commons, that makes the culture of this place worth being here. There's always been this talk about people encouraging students to stay and engaged in the community experience of Cheney, you know what I mean? But again, at the same time, like what's available for them to want to do that. So again, that's sort of that ongoing push to try to make the city of Cheney a vibrant place that people will want to live and engage in. That's not just an Eastern problem, but it's also a city of Cheney problem that we're sort of partnering and trying to build. But that's sort of the middle ground. You know, what's the student life like on campus to where when students are here, they actually want to stay and engage here and not have to go to Spokane to have all their fun and have all their festivities. On the third part of it really is, as they're engaging in all of this, how are they being intentional about the learning they're getting to where they can kind of get a more of a proactive approach to where they see themselves going career-wise, right? So that by the time they get here, obviously they're freshman year, they're just kind of getting their bearings, but they're kind of getting at a much earlier start at what this might look like. Like if there are classes that they're gravitating to, being intentional about how, if this might be a career choice that they may have in mind. And if so, how can they begin to start taking those first steps into exploring that more fully, right? And so that's kind of where we come in. But how I envision it, I honestly think that there definitely needs to be more importance placed on the career aspect to where it's more fully integrated throughout the entire campus. We're working on that now with the Polytechnic focus. And so I'm kind of excited to see where that goes. But again, this is stuff that we've been talking about, at least in the Career Center for, well, since I've been here. So maybe even longer. But when students get here, there's already a process interwoven. We already have the first year experience that's came and gone and came back again. Some people don't want to take it on. It might be too much work, but we're going to dust it off to give it another try. So that's going to be exciting to see. So that first year experience that students will have the time they get here kind of help set the trajectory. I hope we keep it going. It's like a lot of things. We'll try it. If we don't get the results we need, it kind of takes the wind out of the sail. I always encourage people to keep at it, even if it's a slower process than expected. Never get to build a day, you always got to kind of stick with it. And in most of the things we do kind of ebb and flow. Some years you get a big turnout, some years not so much. But ultimately, it's things like this that you're going to have to repeat anyway. I'll give you an example. So we had Gear Up, and then we have new student orientations. But most of that stuff is geared towards students that are coming onto campus and getting them to understand all the basic resources that they have before they get here. So it's usually done during the summer. Maria Reyna and then put that together. There was a time when we were doing this up really consistently, right? And it got to a point where the same people were doing it over and over again, that they got burned out. They're like, oh, we don't think we should do it. It's too much work. No one else is stepping up to help out. So they didn't do it for a year or two. Well, what happened is that at that point, that very next year, that they didn't do it, then students were coming to campus and not knowing where the resources were, not knowing who to talk to, not knowing who does what. And so it hurt more in the back end when you had students that didn't have that prior knowledge coming in. And so then it hurt the process. Rather, it's probably better just to keep it going and endure the lower or higher numbers from one year to the next. Then probably getting more of the administrative backing around it too, because that's usually the big thing is they'll say, hey, this is a good idea. All right, go do it. And like, great, where's the funding? Oh, well, we'll get to that part. Just show us what you're going to do. And then they get to the point where they're doing it. They're working on fumes to make it happen. And then when it finally gets going, they're like, great, this is wonderful. Do it again next year. And intuitively in your mind, you think it's going to go somewhere because that's part of the professional process. If I keep doing the job, they might make me director or assistant director, this or that. So in your mind, you may be doing a more accelerated version of your job description, maybe doing two other people's jobs too. That's another talk for another day. But you think that there's going to be a promotion, so you just kind of deal with it. It never comes. And so that's another thing we're looking at right now is that they have a consultant group that's looking through everyone's job descriptions to make sure that they're staying within those lines. And if they're not, how are they going to compensate them for that? So that's something that's actually going on right now too, which is exciting. People in my position, the worker bees, we do a lot of different things, and there's a lot of things we wish would be different. And we kind of bottle it up because there's never really an opportunity to express that out. There are some times we get moments where we can meet as a group as part of student affairs, but they've already had their schedules so jam-packed that by the time we get to any of the planning, the meeting's over and we don't meet again till the end of the year. So we don't really have anything that's frequent where the worker bees get a chance to talk about ideas that could potentially work. It's just sort of up to us to work amongst ourselves with the permission of our directors to try to make something happen. And if it works, then great, keep doing it. Give you a pat on the back, a couple of attaboys, and then we do it again next year. But there's really no check up on the success. They may ask you once in a while, how did it do? They may want to point to some success stories. We get that a lot. Like, what are some success stories? And everybody has to scramble for them and provide up the chain. But it's not really a consistent, real check-in on the ideas that people have and things that we could do to actually make our process more efficient. We never really get the opportunity for that. So that's what that's all about. It's like, I'll go off on a tangent and I'll forget what I was originally talking about because there's just so much working in my brain that I want to get out. But that's just an example of the Eastern culture, really. And I know it's not just Eastern, but I'm here and it's pretty common that we'll start something. And if it doesn't go our way, we just push it to the wayside and we do something else and do the same thing over and over again. Well, and it's that stick and move method doesn't really work. You have to kind of give it more time to breathe and cultivate itself and build a reputation and get attractive to people. And then from there, just see where it goes. But then on top of that, you need to compensate people enough to where they can adequately make it work the way it should, And so I'm not sure if we're allowed to talk about the new community engagement person. We just announced the person, I believe. We just hired them, but we were on hiatus for that for a while, And usually it was always understaffed. So again, another example, we have all these big ideas. We don't want to put any funding into it. And then when it doesn't work out the way we want it to, that we just try to crash it and say it didn't work. Well, we didn't actually support it the way we should have. So again, that's not an Eastern problem, but it happens a lot here. And so that's kind of where we fit in. When we travel out, we talk to other career centers. We all have the same story, which is we're always left on a lurch. And whenever we have ideas about ways we can integrate career development from early on to where students can transition much more effectively at the end. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, maybe you can submit to me something. I'll get to it when I can. I never do. So we're almost left to our own devices and we just have to build something and they're always there to be like, oh, that was wonderful. Great job. But in terms of the building of it, they're not really a part of that process very much. And so I'm willing to bet that if you were to go around campus and ask the vast majority of the campus what we do, small handful will be able to give you a great definition of what we did. Most of them probably don't know.
I can tell you, because when I was going to school, the only thing I knew about the Career Center is that they might be able to help you get your resume.
Get your resume.
And that's about it. Yeah. So when I graduated, my first job was at CompUSA.
Yeah.
That's doing sales at CompUSA.
Yeah.
Wasn't anything related to my major or anything like that. It was just like, I didn't know any better. I didn't know where I could go. I didn't have any contacts. My counselor didn't recommend anything. He just said, great, you did your thing. Now go out into the world.
Yeah.
So there was no hint of guidance about where to go and how to go about doing it.
And that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's a large portion of what we do is we help students plan out. They're taking all these classes and they're listening to their academic advisors about what classes to take and helping them navigate that. Here we are, we step in and we actually show them what this means in the career world, So, okay, great. You took these core fundamental classes. This gets you to talk to some professionals to show you what's working and what's not in that field. This is probably less true in your nursing field and small portions of your engineering field, but it happens there too, where you got professors that aren't actually in the industry. They haven't been in the industry for quite some time. They're career professors. And so again, that's also the part where we can be of assistance because we can get them in the same room with those outside professionals and they can talk about these are the new things that we're doing, the new technology that we're developing, the types of talent we're looking for. And so it's not just enough to have students to be in the room, but the professors too, so that then they can alter their schedules. They may need to go out and get more training to figure out how can I add this to the course structure. That's how much of the professors are actually tied in close to that field so they know what's actually current in terms of what's being done. So now you have excellent students that go to class, they're doing all their essays, but there's a huge gap between what they're learning and what's actually being executed out in the field. They'll have some core competencies which will help them when they're in the field, but the whole process of their branding, of how to articulate what they're learning in the field when they're looking at a professional. How do they actually go to a career fair or go to some kind of a banquet, any professional setting, and be able to talk to professionals in a way that's going to make them appear qualified, I guess you could say. There's still a whole bunch that goes into that, but even still, how do you engage in an outside professional? That's the whole other world. And when I was doing internship work, that was the selling point that I made oftentimes too, which is, okay, you've been learning this stuff in your classroom. How do you apply this stuff? What does it look like when you actually apply it out in the field? That's what the internship is for. So you can kind of cross-reference like what you're learning in the classroom out in the field. And oftentimes students will test that out and either switch their major or alter their major a little bit because now they know specifics of what, like, we hear big terms like marketing, but when you get into a marketing firm, there's all these other titles that fit under marketing, right? And titles you never even heard of. And so it isn't until you get the internship or do a company tour or job shadow where you actually get exposed to what those titles are. You know what I mean? And so now that you know what this new title and what this new function is, you can bring that back to the school and continue your research and say, okay, I want to go do this. And so then you let all your classroom work be evolving around what that is you want to do. See, but that's the process. You research in class, you go out in the field and you test it and you talk to professionals and then you make alterations. And then based off of that, you bring it back to the classroom and do further research. And then you might go back out to the field again and then see how it's correlating. This is this constant evolution of going back and forth. But again, if you only got one side that's trying to create this space and the other side is kind of reluctant because they're so busy teaching their structure, you don't get that circulation and it hurts the students.
I like that analogy. When we were younger and graduating, Spokane was still relatively small.
Yeah.
But it has grown tremendously from populations coming from all over, from businesses coming in. And like there's a gigantic Amazon warehouse that flew up. I think there's an electric car manufacturer in town. Mm-hmm. There's drone manufacturers just across the border in Idaho.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of different industry within the area that is now available that wasn't there before.
Right.
And I liked what you said there about the professors needing to integrate themselves into the local industries, going and talking to them, maybe through this department, and really understanding what the needs are, and then bringing that back to their classroom. And that analogy, the flow, it got me thinking of another analogy that I was thinking of before. Prior to now, I've been describing college life like silos, where all these departments are living individually in these little silos that they never really touch and meet. But the more I'm thinking about it, people have to start thinking about university systems like an organism, like a human body. So if your lungs are breathing in air, but that oxygen isn't getting into the bloodstream, the organism isn't going to survive. If the heart is pumping blood and that blood is traveling through the circulatory system but isn't going into the muscle and the skin, that organism is going to die. If the brain is doing all the thinking and processing for all the organs and it's going through the spinal cord, but none of that signal is reaching the other organs, that organism is going to die. So until a university really learns to operate like a living organism, to intersect with not just the departments, but also the community around them and the industry around them, they're not going to survive. So it's absolutely vital to use bridges like this office to connect. It's like you're that connection with the outside world that this university really needs.
I mean, since we're on the analogy of vital organs, the liver is a great example because the liver puts up with a lot. And you probably don't get to see the results until you're coughing one day. You wake up and you're a little woozy. You got to go to the doctor and they tell you what's going on. So it's like you could be living ineffectively for quite some time before you actually get the signal that something is wrong. And by then, now you have to go through all these diagnostics to figure out what's exactly wrong and where it's been pinpointed. And so you have to go through all these checks to figure out what's wrong. And it takes a lot of time, effort, and a lot of various different perspectives and opinions on how to solve the problem. But because it's so forgiving, you can kind of get the illusion that it's working. There's a military saying, just because it's quiet doesn't mean that there's peace.
Came from the Cold War, I think.
Hey, who knows? They all like Sun Tzu. Maybe it's further back than that. I think I said his name right.
Yeah, it was something. I think so.
I'm sure it's something there.
Yeah, but I really think that this, like many places within EWU, is a department that doesn't get enough visibility. And again, it's that thing where everybody is so focused in their own little microcosm that they can't. They're looking down this tunnel and they can't open their eyes wide enough to see the world that's around them.
Yeah.
And all that can be done to help them in their classes and help their students, flourish.
All right.
And that's why I'm doing these podcasts, because this is that checkup. You need to have a doctor there saying, hey, there's something wrong over here.
Yeah.
You need to fix the liver. You need to let that oxygen get to the bloodstream. You need to let the heart pump and
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and so I just want to reiterate again that there are a nice handful of faculty that get this point, and a good handful of the departments already have professional development embedded in their courses. And so they already have field trainings. Some of them may require observation hours, things like that. And so we just want to take that and replicate that more effectively with all the other departments and faculty members that unfortunately don't think it's their job to. We've heard that comment a few times where they think that they should only focus on the academic research stuff. And then they refer out for everyone else to do the career stuff. And it's just like this idea of it being interwoven and fully integrated is just something that they don't feel like they have time for. And unfortunately, with that kind of thinking, it really is just going to allow for not only them, but the institution itself to get left behind. Because there's other schools that are working on solutions on how to build that. For instance, like the state of Washington, we just recently got a lot of money came in from the state around Washington Spark. And really it was a push from the governor to revitalize the idea of work in the state. They're putting money into different avenues to do workplace readiness, different kinds of giving money to folks who want to do apprenticeship programs, workplace development stuff for students. And what's interesting about it is a large chunk of that money didn't even go to the four-year institutions. It went to the community colleges because they already had structures in place to help with those projects. They had the Pathways program there. That's with the intention of trying to get students prepared for the workforce. So money went there. So there are a lot more pockets of the community college to have access for those funding options, but the 4 years, not so much. Because again, going back to that disconnect, we don't really have places on this campus for there to be funding that we could petition to the state for. We tried, and when we gathered together all the resources that we were building to try to submit it to the state and say, hey, could you fund this? State was like, no, we're not funding that. One particular part of the policy, the thing that we submitted was money for unpaid interns, so that we would get a bulk of money from the state just to provide compensation for students that were in unpaid internships, because that's been a huge problem also. So the state said, no, we're not supporting that. We want something a little bit more ongoing and a little bit more entrenched in the developmental process. But we want programming. And when we talk about programming, they really didn't have much to speak to it on that. So they didn't get into funding, but the community colleges had it. So that's just an example of what happens when you don't work in cohesion and bridge those gaps. And some of this is in our hands, some of it's outside of our hands, some of it is just upper administration having the conversations and making the compromises. But the faculty is pretty unique because they have a lot more power in that front where I don't want to put the dean's business out there, but I mean, most of them are kind of dealing with the same thing. They can't really force the faculty to do very much anyway. And if they have tenure, it's even harder. The only way to really encourage faculty is through like those who are trying to get tenure. So through that process are class sizes. They got to keep their classes going. That's probably the only once they get their tenure, it's really hard to like change the course of action, right? Yeah. So once they're in, they can kind of put their head back and ride the wave, which is not what a tenure was designed to do. It was designed to protect faculty if they want to ruffle some feathers a little bit. And it seems to be going the opposite direction. Anyway.
No, yeah, I see that. But I think if the funding isn't going to come from the state, and if it's not going to come through the university system, and maybe it's been already talked about or not, it might be after a relationship is fostered with some of these local industries that are getting quality students from us and that want to have more of that same level or higher.
That's exactly.
We can partner with them. Maybe they can provide some more funding.
That's exactly right.
And then that will help facilitate this. And if you can, and I'm calling on any instructor at EWU to come in and visit Romeal Watson and talk with him about going out and meeting with these different companies that are in the fields to have the jobs that your students are going to be wanting to take once they graduate. Because unless that conversation starts happening early, it's not going to happen until the very end. And then your students are going to be wondering where to go from there.
That's how the ecosystem works. And when they're wondering where to go from there and they graduate anyway, and they go out into the working world and they struggle, when they look back in hindsight and wonder what Eastern's done for them, and if their answer to that is not very much, then what kind of a viable resource will they be if and when they persevere anyway and manage to get a great job and they become higher up the totem pole? And Eastern, then the foundation, then the advancement office sends them that lovely little letter asking them to donate money. What kind of response are they going to get when the student looks back on their experience here and realize how much extra work they had to do because we weren't working together? You know what I mean? So it's all part of an ecosystem. And if we don't figure out a way to work together and come up with some solutions for it, it's going to hurt us all in one way or another. Less students coming to Eastern. And again, while I'm saying Eastern, this is a national trend of bowing out of the university structure entirely, and trade schools being an option for a lot of people because they just get to go right in and to study the subject matter and go out into the field. It's more direct. But so that's just a conversation that's happening that all the universities are going through. The ones that step up to the challenge are the ones that are going to turn the curve much sooner. But that really depends on how they're able to leverage a lot of these same roadblocks that we're experiencing with faculty, and if they're at a research one institution, so that's their primary focus. They have other revenue streams, again, with those R1 institutions where they have grants and scholarships that they do from the research that are being gained. So that does offer other resources, but in the larger sense, that's sort of the uphill battle. But donorship from outside institutions, big one. I mean, we get a lot in here in our career center, like we're the only office, believe we're the only department in student affairs that actually has a revenue stream. And we get it from the career fairs, and we get it from donors, or we get it from our partnership programs and things like that, which is what we have. We have an ACE partnership program, which we offer to employers who want to extend their reach on campus. We have a buy-in system. We have complementary services that we offer, like class visits and whatnot. But if they want to really extend their reach, then they buy into it with us. And that's how we build our revenue. And that goes back into the stuff that we're able to do. Like we're trying to spruce up this office, have an employer recognition wall to honor our partners. We want to redesign our lobby to where it's more inviting to students if they want to come in, hang out, and study. We just want to kind of demystify a lot of the perspectives that people have when they think of a career center. A lot of times they think of that old World War II environment where they come in and the person pulls out the little Rolodex and say, hey, we got a job at the warehouse. Here you go. You start Tuesday. There was a time where we had to get rid of that notion too. Like this isn't a placement center. So we've had to go through several name changes. We're a center where we offer services. We're not going to get you the job, but we can give you the skills to help you find it. And in some cases we might have something, but it really just depends on the partnership. And so getting out of that light is a battle in of itself that we're dealing with. And so that goes into the way that people see our office. How do we rebrand ourselves? How do we redesign this place? And another conversation we have, how do we create events that aren't just career-based? How do we just do something fun? Like today, I remember one year we were on the right track when we had different leadership, but one day we were just out in the campus giving out otter pops. There was nothing related. They didn't have to come to the office. They didn't have to sign up for anything. Just otter pops. How you doing? How's your day going? It's hot outside. Here's an otter pop. Movie nights. So it doesn't have to be a documentary on careers or something. It's just a fun movie. We put up the popcorn. We put up pizza. And maybe in those events, we just say, hey, the Career Center's here. We support you. Come see us. And don't go anything else into that. Just leave it. And then they'll put two and two together after a while that, hey, the Career Center is a cool place to be. They step in here. We got a TV. We got Netflix playing. You can get some coffee from the Keurig. We had some crazy ideas for a claw machine. That was more of a smaller conversation. You get a claw machine. They come get a career appointment and they get a token. They go to the claw machine. But this is new age thinking, I think. And it's all done with the attempt to try to not only break down silos, because there's ideas that we have for faculty as well to try to demystify, do the same thing, but primarily for the students. We don't have a pipeline like advising does. So how do we get them encouraged? How do we get them excited about coming here? You know what I mean? It's not going to be the boomer wagging their finger telling you to get your life together. We're going to have an actual conversation that is thought provoking. And that's what they think most of the time. And that's every career center across the country. They all think that's the image they have in their mind, is the old baby boomer who back in the day, we had to walk in snow uphill both ways barefooted, and you're going to pay your dues. And what are you doing with your life? And put the video games down. It's going to rot your brain. And like, that's the image they have to deal with. And so we have a relatively young staff here, but we're still living with that boomer image. So how do we dismiss that and show them something new? That's stuff that we're dealing with. That's all part of how we build this career development empire, which goes back to your original question of what I would like to see. I want to see a career development empire that goes all the way up, that reports directly to the president. And whenever we ride together. If the advancement office goes somewhere, we go too. And everybody's on the same page. If we're going to go see Spokane Police Department like we did yesterday, we had 2 faculty members that showed up there. We were there, and maybe we extend it to where we would have advancement there or something like that. They're a state agency, so they're probably not going to donate anything, but you get my point. Like, we bring multiple people to the front. And oftentimes what happens, you'll get advancement. They'll go to a company and they'll ask for funding, and they might be okay with it. You're like, sure, we'll support Eastern. How do we do that? And then they give them a brochure. They go to the website, and there's a whole laundry list of things that they can donate to. But if we were there, they say, how can we support you? Or how are things looking on the career front? Because everybody else seems to know what college is for, but us sometimes. So they're like, you're going to college so that you can increase your market value, so that you can go out and get a better job. Mostly everybody in the outside world knows this. We're the ones that are sort of ambivalent about the process. It's about spiritual rejuvenation, all the mental well-being, which that's all part of it. Yeah, building friends and finding partners and stuff. Sure, that's all part of the campus life thing, but that's not the only thing. So it's much more clear to people on the outside, because why are they paying all this money, and why are they watching their kids go into debt just to come out in the struggle? Like, that's not the whole point of this. And so how do we build with each other to break down all of those old structures that were created like 100 years ago?
It was all the stuff that was made in a different time, in a different world, in a different economy, for an entirely different population. This is a new world. And I think we are seeing that kind of renaissance on campus with a lot of those partners. I think obviously you are extremely passionate about helping these kids and helping the school do better. And I think that just really comes through.
When we were at the tour yesterday with Spokane Police Department, you want to know what they're largely in search of? It's not criminal justice majors, although they'll take them. They always need deputies. They always need boots on the ground. But it's a lot of the other disciplines. It's biology. It's computer science. It's engineers, right? If they already have people that already have some foundational knowledge in these other disciplines, it saves them money from now having to subcontract to other experts to bring them in to assess whatever they're doing. Like if they're on a seized property or something like that, they already have finance folks, somebody who had a background in agriculture who could look at that tractor and say, oh yeah, that's about $75K. I don't know which one would cost that much, but you get
John Deere. We definitely need a John Deere.
Right. So it's like bringing in officers that just have a wide variety of backgrounds to help them have a variety of different areas. They're going to be going further into AI technology within the police department. They got all these different research files that they have to do that takes them weeks to do. Whereas with AI, it takes them seconds. When they compile all the data up to come up with correlations between certain kinds of criminal activity, they get this big old file on their desk. They got to filter through it. It takes them a week to do it. AI does it in 5 minutes. That's what they want. They got drone technology, machine learning, robotics, all this other stuff. They got things that will go into houses, and not a human soul actually goes into the house. It's robotic. A little robot dog or something will open up the door. A drone will fly in. And so when I talk to them, I'm like, do you have a need for computer science majors? It's like, yeah. It's kind of a no-brainer in some aspects that the police department would need computer science majors, but most of the time they're thinking about analytics types of stuff. But now in this new world, that need now goes into the actual enforcement part of it too, whereas before it probably wasn't the case. So it's like, and that's just one industry we're talking about. And we go to health, the way health and technology is coming together now, where They got all these new devices now that can go inside your body and unclog your arteries and all kind of stuff like that. Little baby cameras. That stuff just isn't stuff that your average nurse has time for. They got to collaborate with different tech industries to come up with that stuff. And so as this stuff starts to evolve, our institution needs to be ahead of the curve on how we're providing the talent to be able to meet those needs. That's the bold letters that we have to kind of heed that call on. That's my message, man, for that.
Yeah. I think that wraps up pretty well. And I think your department here is definitely the gateway, and teachers, instructors, faculty, staff, administrators need to come here and talk with you and really see how they can
figure out a plan.
Yeah. Well, Romeal, thank you so much again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Always good to hang out and talk, and we'll have to catch up real soon.
Looking forward to it.